On tonight's panel, we're discussing the contentious issue of valuing your house. Why do banks often value your house a fair bit less than real estate agents do? Joining me on the panel from WBP Property Group, Greville Pabst, from the REIV, Robert LaRocca, and from Fletcher's Real Estate, Tim Fletcher. I'll go to you first, Robert. It's a pretty tough issue because people always think their house is worth top dollar.
You are spot on. It is probably one of the most difficult issues, that of value, that we face when it comes to real estate, of course, because, you know, when you're selling your home, you want as much as you can get. When you're buying the home, you want to spend as little as you can get. And I'm reminded through that whole process of saying from my father, which was really, really true, I think, it's only worth what the other person's willing to pay for it. So pegging that value is very hard. People face three different types of valuations often. There's, you know, what the council rates say their property's worth, which is a point in time. There's what a professional valuer will tell them it is worth, which is probably different again due to time factor. And then there's what it might sell for on the day and what the real estate agent will say that it might sell for. They're all different, and they all may also differ from what it actually sells for, because real people are offering real money at that point in time.
And Greville, is it a case too that bank valuers tend to be more on the conservative side because obviously the bank's going to take a risk and lend money on it?
That's always a common assertion against valuers. They're easy, you know, to be the blame for the transaction not coming up or the loan being declined. We'll just blame the valuer. But I think that's a bit unfair in many respects because the valuers, they don't set the market, they don't set the benchmarks, they interpret the market. And so what they do is they'll do a physical inspection of the property and then they will actually look at what are the comparable sales in that particular street, and they'll look at those comparable sales, they'll make some comparisons, and I like to say that, you know, they compare apples with apples and then make the adjustments for the bruises. And they do that and then they come up with a figure. Now, they are working on past sales, so it's not, you know, where the market's going, and often they get criticism for that because there's got to, as I said, there's got to be someone to blame. But there's not two sets of values. There's not really any valuer for whatever purpose he is doing the valuation for. It must be a market valuation. So there is that perception sometimes that bank valuers are more conservative than for other purposes, but really all valuers have the same set of criteria in the definition of market value: willing buyer, willing seller. They must follow that doctrine.
Now, Tim, you are actually a qualified valuer yourself, but when you're an agent going to get business, people don't want to hear you say, well, the market value might be this. They want to hear that you are going to get them top dollar for their property. So are you between a bit of a rock and a hard place?
Yes and no to that. I mean, I think it's fair to say, as a valuer, I wear a different hat to that as an estate agent. I wouldn't go and give people advice about selling their home and also be doing a valuation on the property. You'd get someone independent to do that. So the roles are very different there. But in terms of the perception, as we've been discussing about the market worth being different to what a valuer might put on it. Now, I've had cases as a valuer where a mortgage valuation, where people are lending money, will want garden improvements discounted. So if they ask for the market value, the value will, to the best of their ability, based on comparable sales, as Greville said, it doesn't look to the future, which the estate agent might do. It has to have regard to the future, but it's more feet on the ground approach. Some might call it a little conservative, but it is feet on ground stuff. You have to. You can't, wearing the other hat as an estate agent, envisage that because you know who's in the market at the time, that these people may pay quite a bit more than any other comparable sale in the area has regard to. So it depends on the nature of the instructions to the valuer. I've had plenty of valuations, as I said, where I've been specifically asked where it's been a very grand garden, because they can deteriorate very quickly. You borrow the money, person lends the money, house stays the same, it might deteriorate a bit if they don't look after it, but the garden can go to the pack easily. But it can add a lot of value if you're selling. So there are those sort of issues to have regard to.
And you'll appreciate, Tim, with a mortgage valuation, we are doing the valuation not for the applicant, we're actually doing the valuation for the bank. Yeah. We're actually protecting the bank's interests. We're the bank manager doesn't go out and inspect the property anymore like he used to. I mean, the banks rely on the valuer. We're the bank's eyes and ears. And I always like to use this saying that, you know, when the bank comes and puts a red flag outside the property on a cold, wintry Saturday afternoon when the home football team's playing away, that's the price, you've got to get. And if valuers get it wrong, I mean, we can be, sued, and that happens quite regularly. So we have to whatever price we put on a property, we have to be certain that within a 3 months period that value will be achieved at an auction.
How much do they take in from actually the physical visit to the property? How much is it, as you said, research of past sales and everything else, and the hard, cold facts? And how much is, because I know when we got ours valued, the inspector was there for about 98 seconds, I'd reckon. He went through the house. He was in and out very quickly.
Really, a valuer typically should spend 20 minutes to half an hour there. By the time you properly measure up a building and check the land dimensions and then go through each room, they really should be there for 20 minutes.
I mean, the council valuers don't even visit anymore. Once upon a time,
look in the window.
No, once upon a time, the council valuation service would drive down the street and do a front inspection, and then rely upon block size and comparables to come up with their differentials. For 10 years now, it's just all done on computer. They don't leave the office often, except if they've got a tricky case. Which brings up the issue of the auto valuation systems you can see on some property websites, which you really have to be careful about. To go to a property website that says this home is worth X, without anyone ever having seen it, you really need to form your own judgment when you're going into the marketplace about what you're willing to pay for that property, because the valuations are nice to have. They give you an indication of where the market might be, but they don't set the price always. And because ultimately real estate is not like a lot of other commodities, bread for instance, where there's a fixed price. You don't go into the street and have a price on the property and that's what you buy it for, because someone else might want to pay more than you do.
I think people need to appreciate that valuation is not an exact science. It's an opinion by an expert based on evidence that they have. Now, there are times when there is no evidence. There's very few or no comparable sales. So it makes it much harder to determine what that property's worth. But there is a long-held view, it's about 100 years ago, a Spencer case in Australia, which defined market value, and nothing has changed over those years. You'll never, ever get a property that's exactly the same as another one.
No. I mean, the Victorian law breaks that down. It says when a real estate agent is providing an indication of value, quoting to a buyer or seller, they've got to do what a willing but not anxious buyer will pay. So that's just saying on an average scenario, and an anxious buyer is one who really wants the property and is prepared to pay whatever they've got, and that can help show the differences that can occur on sale day.
Tim is right. I mean, valuation is an art. It's not a science. And we have, battles in our office on a daily basis where, two valuers will go to the same property, and they will often come in at different values, providing they're within 10% of each other. I'm quite happy with that, but sometimes it's more.
But if you get a really unique property, there's nothing to hang your hat on. It's very much a point of view, and ultimately the best test of all. Go to the market. You market it properly if it's unique and it's an appropriate property to auction. At the end of the marketing period, then you can say that's what the market worth is. A vendor might want X and it sells for X and a bit. Well, that's the market worth, and that is the ultimate test of what a property's worth.
And an owner always thinks their property is worth more than what it actually is.
As you do.
Funny people, owners, aren't they? Thanks, gentlemen, for joining us. Greville, Robert and Tim. We'll be back with more MPTV in just a moment.